Viola Davis, The Help. Before starring in The Help as Aibileen Clark, Viola Davis had already built an impressive career with challenging roles. But Aibileen became a major turning point, earning Davis an Oscar nomination for Best Actress and bringing her even greater attention in Hollywood. Yet years later, Davis looked back at the movie with complicated feelings. In an interview with the New York Times, she criticized the film for putting its white central character at the heart of a story that was supposed to be about Black women. The Help had already faced criticism for relying on a white savior narrative, and Davis understood that criticism. She explained that she knew Aibileen and Minnie because women like them reminded her of her own mother and grandmother. For Davis, the problem was that the movie never fully explored what those women actually felt. If the story was supposed to show what it was like for Black women working for white families and raising their children in 1963, Davis wanted to hear their honest perspective. Instead, she felt that perspective was missing, and that left her asking a simple question: why? Kate Winslet, Titanic. You jump, I jump, right? Kate Winslet became an international star by playing Rose in Titanic, one of the biggest blockbusters in movie history. But despite the film's enormous success, Winslet has never described the experience as an easy one. One of the most famous moments in the movie is Rose's nude drawing scene with Jack. Winslet has openly discussed how uncomfortable she was filming that scene, calling the experience deeply unusual. But her criticism went beyond that. Winslet has also been extremely hard on her own performance as Rose. In fact, she has described her entire performance in Titanic as something she dislikes. At the 2012 premiere of the movie's 3D re-release, she even criticized her own American accent. Considering the performance earned her an Oscar nomination, Winslet's self-criticism was pretty intense. But it wasn't only her acting that bothered her. She also remembered the filming itself as extremely difficult. In an interview with the Los Angeles Times, Winslet described harsh conditions on set and recalled an incident in which she nearly drowned. She also spoke about director James Cameron, saying there were moments when she was genuinely frightened of him. The production involved incredibly long working days, many of which stretched deep into the night. Winslet later said she would never want to work on a production with such a long schedule again. She explained that it became difficult to maintain her focus, her connection to the character, and even her own sense of integrity. For the first time in her life on a film set, she found herself thinking that she wished she wasn't there. Andrew Linklater, Love Actually. It's carol singers. Long before becoming famous as Rick Grimes in The Walking Dead, Andrew Linklater became known around the world for playing Mark in the Christmas romantic comedy Love Actually. His most memorable moment comes when Mark stands outside Juliet's home, holding up a series of cards that reveal his feelings for her. At the time, the scene was presented as romantic, but as audiences have revisited the movie over the years, many began to see the relationship differently. What once seemed sweet to some viewers now looks much more uncomfortable, and Andrew Linklater himself eventually came to the same conclusion. In a 2016 interview with The Wrap, Linklater described Mark as a stalker. He even revealed that this was something he had questioned director Richard Curtis about while making the movie. Linklater wondered whether Mark's behavior had crossed into what he considered borderline stalker territory. Curtis, however, said that during production, he and the others involved never viewed Mark and Juliet's relationship that way. The famous poster board scene wasn't intended to be creepy. Still, Curtis has acknowledged that modern audiences can look at the scene through a different lens. With changing attitudes and a more modern perspective, he understands why viewers today may interpret the relationship very differently from how it was originally presented. Betsy Palmer, Friday the 13th. Before Friday the 13th, Betsy Palmer was already an established name, but after playing Mrs. Voorhees, that became the role most people remembered her for. Palmer, who died in 2015, apparently wasn't thrilled that the horror character became such a major part of her legacy. In a behind-the-scenes interview for the documentary Return to Crystal Lake, Palmer explained how she originally ended up accepting the role. Her agent approached her about doing a movie. Palmer agreed because she saw it as a chance to make enough money to buy the car she wanted. Then she learned the movie was a horror film. She still accepted the part, but she wasn't particularly excited about it. And then the script arrived. After reading it, Palmer had an extremely blunt reaction. She thought the screenplay was terrible. At the time, there was no way for her to know what that movie would eventually become. The Friday the 13th franchise would grow into 12 films, along with comics, novels, a television series, and merchandise, and Jason Voorhees would become one of the most recognizable villains in horror history.
For Betsy Palmer, the irony is hard to miss. A role she accepted largely to help pay for a car eventually became one of the most memorable parts of her career.